before I start, I just want to say this cover is freaking beastly. Love this cover. Alright, so this episode of One Piece, it was a fine episode. I felt like a lot of the stuff that was in it definitely dragged it out. Like the stuff with Caesar's people chanting, Caesar, Caesar, for like a good 30 seconds straight. And then Caesar just sitting there in the chair and everything trying to, convince them. It was like, it felt very long and dragged out, that particular part of the episode, so I wasn't really feeling that. I wasn't a big fan of that portion of the episode. And then overall, as a whole, the episode, especially the way it was described in like the preview and everything, it was like, okay, so there's gonna be a cool fight and some other good stuff. And the fight wasn't really like put together. It was just, you got a piece of it in the beginning and then you got a slight piece of it at the end, and then it's just like, there you go. I'd say the best bit of this episode and the most interesting and best progression and everything was getting that flashback of Caesar. That particular part I think was well done, and it was very enjoyable, and everything all around. It was just good stuff because it gave us more of a backstory on how much of a piece of shit Caesar is, and we find out that it wasn't Vegapunk, it was actually Caesar that blew this shit up, which it makes perfect sense because look at Caesar. He's a freaking psychopath. He don't care. He'll kill anybody, do anything, and then laugh about it later. He is literally like the anime version of the Joker if he were a scientist and had like a ghastly body. Yeah. So, that was definitely the best bit. It was interesting. I really was like, oh shit, Vegapunk! We actually got to hear his voice, I believe, which was pretty freaking interesting. I was hoping we get like a silhouette or something, but it was definitely off screen and everything, because obviously in the manga he wasn't shown. But still, nonetheless, it was a good bit. I enjoyed that particular part, and that was actually the most interesting and relevant thing about the episode. Aside from that, it was a lot of dragged out stuff with Caesar, trying to convince the men. And like, why would Caesar even care about convincing them? At the end of the day, they're not going to help him. He could probably kill all of them right now in the snap of a finger if he wanted to. He could just suffocate all of them. So I just didn't really care for those bits. And at the same time, the stuff with Monet really didn't go anywhere. They just talked. And the battle with Smoker and Vergo really was just like, that was probably a good opening, and it was just like, oh shit, it was cool and stuff like that. But then it just got broken apart, and we didn't get to see any of it until the end of the episode. It was like 3 minutes of the fight in the beginning, and that was about it. And the way they just have like Law down on the ground, he doesn't even look damaged anymore. He just has like a couple of scrapes. Like animation, it didn't, not having that high quality that we had a couple episodes back. So disappointed about that as well. But overall, as a whole, I think the Caesar part definitely added a lot to it. Again, getting hear Vegapunk's voice for the first time was pretty interesting, and just learning of how much of a piece of shit he really was, where he was talking about even back then when he was coming up and shit as a scientist of kidnapping kids and blowing up freaking Punk Hazard and turning it just into like what it became and whatnot. Of course, Aokiji and Akaino did more, but him blowing up the lab and everything is just freaking incredible to learn that he's that freaking badass. So like Caesar might come off as a joke sometimes, and the stuff might come off as clownish, but he is a badass on the inside, and he's just sadistic. So it gave more to the Caesar clown. It was basically like character development for Caesar Clown, I felt, with this episode. A little bit of cool action in the beginning, cut short, and then we got just a lot of stretching out of other stuff. Let's look at the mountains for 15 seconds. Let's look at this for a couple seconds. So that really... Oh, and I guess another important thing was we got to see this little baby dragon looking kind of like a baby Shenron, but in pink at the end of the episode with Luffy. For anime-only viewers, I won't spoil what that is or who that is or anything like that, but I guess you could imagine, what's going on with that. It was interesting as well to see that, so that was progression as well, that we got another character introduced. And actually, you know what? Spoiler alert, you don't want to be spoiled, just skip over this and mute me real quick. The dragon is Momonosuke, obviously. I mean, anybody could tell before even, anybody could tell that dragon, hello, 1 + 1 is 2. So yeah, that's Momonosuke. So we got progression with that as well, getting to see, the son after all this time, hearing about him and everything. And I like this little voices, everything kind of fits him and whatnot. So yeah, fine episode. The best part about it, the most relevant, is definitely the Caesar part and the ending. Fight didn't really care for it because it was just like, it started up cool and everything, but then it just broke apart, and then the episode just kept on dragging out. So I'm gonna give this one 6 out of 10. Fine episode. Was hoping for a lot more out of this, but it just once again went back into that slow pacing. And with One Piece, is like, you get like an episode is really, really good, and then next week it'll just be like slow down again. And it's unfortunate, but hey, that's what you gotta do if you don't want filler. Let me know what you thought of the episode. First of all, What did you think about the whole thing with Caesar doing that, blowing up Punk Hazard and all the crazy shit that he did, blowing up that lab and stuff? Do you think that he is truly a sadistic piece of shit, or are you still more like overclouded by the shit of him, laughing all the time and shit? And also the whole thing with the ending of the episode, the little baby dragon. Are you interested to see what he can do, etc.? Were you just excited or whatever? I just wasn't too big of a fan of the episode. It was alright, and like I said, my favorite bit or whatever. But that's all I have for this one. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Thumbs up if you can't wait for next week, because hopefully next week we'll get a conclusion, or somewhat of a conclusion, to the Smoker versus Vergo battle, and see some more epic shit. But that's all I have for this one. I'm ForneverWorld, and as always, people, have an awesome day.